As you can see in my WHS handicap page, my last 7 tournament scores averaged 90 plus. Note these are all tournament scores as indicated by a letter T. During the pandemic, I reconstructed my golf swing using a hitting cage in my house and created a tutorial so I can share it with the rest of the world. When the golf course reopened, I played some test rounds and improved 10 strokes. After making some corrections to my swing, I thought I was good enough to break 80. So I played the first tournament in my club since the pandemic. It was a two-person scramble. My partner was a 14-year-old girl with an impressive 5 handicap. We finished with 3 under par gross. However, we should have easily scored 7 under if I did not commit so many unforced errors. I will show clips of the tournament to highlight some of the principles and techniques in my tutorial. I will also show the mistakes I made. Then, I will give a general outline of how I corrected my mistakes. I can't go into much detail because you will need a backgrounder on the terminologies and core principles of my tutorial to understand the details. Besides, piecemeal advice in golf is usually ineffective and can even end up confusing you and destroying your swing. For my complete tutorial, go to bit.ly/intellectual-golf. So this is the second hole where we scored our first birdie. It's a 160-yard par 3. This is where my shot ended up. Grace is a much better putter than me, so I went first to show her the line. In my tutorial, I talked about setting smart goals. My goal for now in putting is just to follow the line to test the principles and techniques in my tutorial. It's okay if my putt is too soft or too hard, and it's okay if my caddy gives me the wrong line. My goal is just to follow whatever line my caddy gives me. Reading the green is an inborn ability, so I should not bother about it. Speed control is something I cannot teach in my tutorial. You can only learn speed control after lots of practice on the golf course. So my objective in this putt is just to follow the line, but luckily I sank the putt. Looks like my tutorial works because I can now score birdies.
Nice birdie.
The very next hole was a par 4. As you can see, the right side slopes down towards the middle of the fairway like an embankment. Most players would lay up using a rescue like what Grace is doing here. But my strategy is to use the embankment to my advantage. I used a driver and just did a 45-degree body turn to hit a stinger or low shot so that if I miss to the right, there is still a chance the ball will funnel towards the middle of the fairway instead of going in the water.
Nice shot.
This is where my ball ended up, right in the middle of the fairway. As I said in my tutorial, a practice swing where you try to get the correct divot location gives you a huge advantage because it's almost like you get to do a free trial shot. I hit the ball solid, but my ball went to the right. This error happened a lot during the game. Luckily, Grace always stepped up to be my saving grace. Get it? Later in this video, I will show you how I corrected this mistake. This was the approach shot of Grace, which gave us another birdie opportunity. My putt did not go in, but I was happy because I accurately followed the line that my caddy gave me. My caddy was surprised at my big improvement. Before I developed my tutorial, I used to 3-putt almost all the holes. Now, I would always follow the line she gives me. But I should not expect to have good speed control yet because in the last 5 years, I only played an average of 4 times a year. And as I said in my tutorial, speed control is the easy part and will naturally come the more I play. This was the hole where we scored our second birdie. It's a dogleg par 5. In our second shot, Grace masterfully cut through the dogleg over the ravine and her ball ended up around the green. My chip was good enough for Grace to sink the birdie. The principles and techniques in my tutorial really improved my short game.
Wala. Ay!
This was the beautiful par 4 where we scored our third birdie. Both our shots ended up around the green, but Grace's ball had a better running room. My chip left us with a 15-footer, which I sank, although I did not catch it in video. In the next hole, I almost scored another hole-in-one.
Okay, hole in one, ay. Ay, ay, nice on.
This was the same hole I scored a hole-in-one 6 years ago, where I won close to 2 million worth of prizes, including a subdivision lot, a brand new truck, a motorcycle, plane tickets, 100K in cash, and 6 nights in Plantation Bay, where I scored another hole-in-one.
Sud. Ah!
My putt followed the correct line, but it was too short. Luckily, Grace stepped up again to save the day.
Nanaog yun, oh. Kuwang lagi. Dito sa tubangan.
This was the par 5 18th, where we scored our fourth birdie. We both hit good drives, but my second shot went way right. Grace stepped up again and hit her second shot just 10 yards short of the green. I made a good chip, close enough for Grace to sink the birdie putt.
Tara, nice birdie.
I suspected the culprit of my mistakes was the clubhead orientation because I haven't really made any effort to stabilize the clubhead orientation. At first, I thought it's impossible to stabilize the clubhead orientation because the motion of the downswing is too fast for my eyes and brain to monitor. The game of golf is really a contest on who can make the clubhead orientation during ball impact the same as it was during address position. All the principles and techniques in this tutorial is aimed towards this goal. But this goal is too general to be useful. It's like a basketball coach instructing his team to score more points than the opponents. A scratch golfer in Cebu named Jeannie Asnar once told me that he could see the clubhead orientation during downswing and ball impact. The ability to see fast motion is probably the advantage that made him a scratch golfer. Fortunately for us less gifted golfers, I discovered some techniques that makes it easier to stabilize the clubhead orientation. My discoveries could reverberate throughout the world and change the history of golf. But I can't discuss them in this video because you will need to be familiar with the principles and terminologies of my tutorial. And as I said, piecemeal advice in golf can mess up your swing. You can only learn my precious discoveries if you devote lots of time and effort to master my tutorial. For my complete tutorial, go to bit.ly/intellectual-golf. But here's an excerpt of my tutorial that can be understood without a backgrounder. It's also important for you to be aware that your perception of the clubhead orientation at the top of the backswing is reversed. Example, at the bottom of the swing, if you make the clubhead face up, the clubhead will face right. And if you make the clubhead face down, the clubhead will face left. But at the top of the backswing, if you make the clubhead face up, the clubhead will be facing left when it hits the ball. And if you make the clubhead face down, the clubhead will be facing right when it hits the ball. To prevent this potentially disastrous blunder, you should avoid adjusting the clubhead orientation at the top of the backswing and simply cock and uncock along the left arm plane.